Welcome to the A2 Show with Andrew Cass and Aaron Parkinson, bringing you the trends and topics that affect our lives the most: business, politics, fitness, family, and finance. With over 50 plus years of combined business experience and over $1 billion in revenue generated, your hosts have a unique gift for seeing many steps ahead where others do not. They bring their unfiltered, contrarian views to the show every week to help you win in business and in life.
Aaron, I'm going to quote Mark Zuckerberg in this opening here today, since he's all over the news globally at this point, and it is his statement that we are in the midst of one of the greatest cultural shifts we've ever seen in our lifetime.
And you know what?
Massive swing of sentiments. I know you talked about a couple words you mentioned before we kicked off, but man, this is like, there are so many forces at play right here. And it all stems, to me, and I know you said this is going to be a little bit bigger, but to me, it all stems back to free speech, First Amendment. And when you squash that, it's why it's first for a reason. You create turmoil, and that turmoil is starting to be unwound right now. There was a massive attempt in the last few years to squash free speech, to squash debate, and a censorship scheme was implemented like we've never seen and I'm talking from an American standpoint because it was the American administration that orchestrated it, which Mark Zuckerberg admitted. We've never seen an administration, a sitting president, a sitting administration orchestrate a legitimate full-on censorship scheme from top down around social media companies and around free speech that was right out of the Soviet playbook.
I am so excited about the things that I'm seeing happen in such quick order over the last month.
Yep.
That when you said, what do you want to talk about today? I was like, I know exactly what I want to talk about today, because it's literally daily right now. You're seeing ping, 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 ping. And I haven't seen such a shift, or in some cases, such a speed of backpedaling happening right now, and it is such a breath of fresh air, and I think it's only the beginning. And I thought we need to talk about some of these things right now and draw people's attention to it, because it's going to only mean some very interesting, positive economic and political changes over the next 4 years, and I'm super excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Like you said, there's a lot going on. I think it really stems from what we started off here with today, which is Facebook. Basically, I mean, Facebook, it was almost like an admission of guilt publicly to the world. I've never seen something like this, where they came out and said, we'll start with Zuckerberg and Facebook, since that was, the biggest news, is we're going to move away from fact checking. Fact checking, by the way, is something that's new, right? There was no fact checking when you know Facebook as well as anybody as a Facebook ads advisor, right? There was no fact checking about 5 or 6 years ago. Fact checking is a new thing.
When you said new, I was wondering where you're going with that. Yeah, it was about 5-6 years ago.
Yeah. This is within the decade, right? So this is a brand new thing. And fact check is just code word for censorship. You're not fact checking anything, because Facebook, who says Facebook has the patent rights to facts? Facebook is just a social media platform. They could have an opinion, but who deems them who anoints them the fact checker, right? It's just like me saying I'm a fact checker. Well, no, I'm not. Who anoints me the fact checker, right? So Facebook sort of anointed themselves as fact checker, right? Which was code for censoring anything we don't like, or more importantly, and even more scary, was censoring what the government told us to censor under the FBI in a full-on coercion scheme, in which they were threatened with their Section 230 protection, by the way, which, if anybody doesn't know what that is, if you're a social media company or any kind of a media company and you don't have Section 230 protection, that means you can be sued and held liable for anything that someone says on the platform that's defamatory. They were threatened with their Section 230 protection by the Biden administration if they didn't take down COVID-19 information that they deemed dangerous, which AKA meant that went against the COVID-19 vaccine narrative. That was the whole thing. I wrote a huge piece on it in my Renegade report. I'll include the link down below. But that was the start of the censorship industrial complex. It began with Facebook. It started with Twitter. But when Musk got in there, he was like, no, thanks. I'm actually going to expose it, not play with it. And he did. The Twitter files speak volumes. Those are documented emails. And Facebook and Instagram, really, they became the punching bag. And Zuckerberg, I think, started over the years, it seems like, to me, Aaron, he's just started to really feel like his conscience couldn't do it anymore. I mean, he literally was he was violating the First Amendment and essentially breaking the law in partnership with the Biden administration. There's no two ways about it. It's all in court now. It's in court cases now.
Well, let's just start off with, in case people haven't seen it, what happened. You know, Zuckerberg came out this week and basically said, look, we're making massive sweeping changes. We're no longer going to have a fact.
We're getting back
checking.
to our roots, Aaron. We're getting back to our roots, AKA we're going to stop censoring people. We're getting back to our roots. Roots.
So he said, you know, we made Facebook so that people could connect, could entertain, could share their opinions openly. And over the last, decade, really, we've put a lot of systems in place based on, what was suggested to us or what we thought was right. And our systems got overly aggressive in fact checking, removing people, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought he was quite bland in his delivery. Like it was very scripted to not indict himself or anybody else really along the way. But if you went back and you watched his interview on Joe Rogan, he talks about how, the FBI basically called Facebook and said, we're treating, the Biden son laptop as misinformation.
That's exactly right.
We're treating this as information. So I really felt like the Rogan interview is where he started to say, you know what?
He did.
I need to share that this isn't about me. This is about forces bigger than I can control. And he said, what are you supposed to do when the government or the FBI calls you and says, you will treat this as this? He said, there's only so much power a company or a person can have. When the government calls, you kind of just do what the government says.
This is how the mafia works, by the way. You just explained a mafia ring. And he explained it shockingly on Joe Rogan in 2022, which was really surprising. This goes back a long way. I've been tracking this story for 2.5 years now. 2022, he's talking about this mid Biden administration. I'm saying to myself, man, he's putting a lot at risk right now. He's in the middle of 2020. He has 2 more years to deal with the Biden admin. And the FBI and the whole coercion censorship scheme. And he's basically throwing a little softball out there with Rogan. I think this was the time he had his little metamorphosis with, joining the MMA group and hanging out with guys like Dana White and Joe Rogan. We were talking about that earlier today. I think he was starting to get into that world at that point and realizing that I'm really a fraud at this point. Am I really going to allow coercion and mafia-like behavior? Am I really going to am I going to really participate in violating people's free speech, in taking a shit on democracy, and violating the First Amendment because I was bullied to do so by the government? I think this really ate him up personally.
I do too, and I don't think he liked how he felt or he was being painted.
Conscience just ate him up.
If you look at really any of the speeches or quotes of his from sort of previous Joe Rogan, there was a lot of vitriol. There was a lot of hate, a lot of negative comments towards him, about being a shill and this and that. And then, roughly about 3 years ago now, he started to train jiu-jitsu with guys like Alexander Volkanovski, who was a world champion, and Max Holloway, who was a world champion. And if you've never done martial arts, specifically jiu-jitsu, it is one of the most humbling, grounding, personally rewarding experiences you'll ever do, because you can walk into the gym and you can say, I'm a multi-billionaire. I'm one of the richest people in the world. And if you're going to one of the right gyms, they'll say, that's excellent. We're just proud of you that you're here. We're going to treat you with respect. But you find out very quickly the moment you get on the mat. Oftentimes, it's happened with me with people who are younger than me, smaller than me, females. You get your ass handed to you so fast that it shocks you, and it rearranges your belief system around yourself on how small and weak you actually are. I think he went in there
and you were in that space, Aaron. I mean, for the people that don't know you lived the MMA world as a lightweight for a long time in your life, so you can speak to that as that environment and that culture as good as anybody.
And that's why people really love that environment, because it's nothing but respect. But Joe talks about it all the time on his show. It's very grounding. The people there are very grounding and humble. And the problem is when you become that rich and that powerful and that influential, you lose connection with what's real and what's not. And then when you come back down into that place and somebody gets on your back and they put their arm around your neck and they tell you, if I felt like it right at this moment, I could kill you with no effort whatsoever in the next 30 seconds, and there's not a thing you can do about it. All your money, all your power, all your influence could not save you from me today. I could end your life.
At this moment, you have no control whatsoever in your life.
You are
And
completely
that is
out
an
of control.
extremely unorthodox, uncomfortable, unconventional way for somebody worth a couple $100 billion to think, where literally the world revolves around them.
Absolutely.
And at this moment, the world could end.
And
It's a
it
really
shapes
good
you.
analogy. It's a really good perspective you laid out there.